My name is Marianne Stalvik. I'm a senior advisor at the National Center of Expertise, Treatment of Youths with Severe Behavior Problems. And I'm here with my coworker.
My name is Elisabeth Sørli. I'm a clinical psychologist working mainly with adolescents in institutions.
Yeah. And we work for the Office for Children, Youth and Family Affairs, Bufetat in Norway. And we are a national team. No? Okay, it's one back. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little about from in-home services to residential placement in Norway. We're going to talk about the risk, need, and responsivity principles, the standardized course of treatment in Norway, the national data we just collected on the high-risk youths, and future services. And then we're going to multifunc treatment model for high-risk adolescents. We have home-based services in Norway. When they get referred by the municipalities, they try home-based services first. This is the lowest form of treatment to try to work with the family and the systems around before institution placement is considered. But when the pattern has set, there are more risks on several areas, then they will be referred to the municipality by the municipality to a national team of assessment psychologists, which assesses their needs with an instrument that we will talk a little about later. This national team assess them and advise them on which kind of institutions they need. And this service recommendation is based on target groups, which we will talk about later.
There are two main categories of institutions in Norway. You have those institutions for the children who needs care. They have no parents who can take care of them, so they can move into institutions if they cannot move into foster care. The other kind of institutions are those for the adolescents with behavior problems. They divide into three more categories, this group. So that's the target residential care. And we're going to talk about how we divide these kids into these three target groups: low risk, high risk, and substance abuse. And the way in to these institutions are either by consent. The kids and the families can consent to being placed in institutions. That's the paragraph on the top, 6.1, or the other paragraph in the law is that if they don't consent, the civil court can make a decision that they should stay in an institution to get treatment for their behavioral problems.
Yeah. And there are reasons for these targeting service groups because of contamination and other risks by having them together.
And to divide these adolescents or juveniles into the three groups, we need to have something to use to measure so that we can divide them into which kind of group or institution they should belong to. And we use this R&R principle in this work. I don't know if you are familiar with this, R&R?
No.
The risk, it's Canadian research, Canadian and American research from way back in the 50s and 60s and up until now. The risk principle says something about how high the risk is for you to keep doing the criminal behavior or the substance abuse. The higher the risk, the higher the probability of you becoming an adult with criminal behavior and substance abuse. The need principle says something about what is the need, what do we have to target the treatment towards, because we cannot treat needs that the kids, what can I say, we cannot treat the things that we normally think is behind these
Their
behavior.
mental disorders.
Mental disorder and the trauma they have experienced in life. This is saying something about what is maintaining their behavior problems in life. That's the need. So it's 42 risk factors that that the research have found that we have to direct the treatment towards. So we have to direct the treatment towards their need.
And it's scientifically proven over years with science on these 42 risk factors. Also has these protection factors. Yeah.
So first we have to find what kind of children or adolescents have the highest risk, so that we can take them into institutions, not the ones with the lower risk. Because every teenager has behavior problems sometimes in life. And mostly it goes okay with these children. They should not be in institutions. So we have to find who are these adolescents that need treatment in institutions. That's the risk principle. We'll say something about that. The higher the risk, the higher the intensity of the treatment has to be. So this is the population we should treat in institutions. And then we have to find what kind of needs do they have, so we can direct the treatment towards their needs, so that we can lower the risk for this probability of becoming an adult criminal or adult substance abuser. And so we have to take to account their responsivity. And the responsivity principle says that we have to direct the treatment towards the individual, how their mental health is, how their cognitive abilities are, and their trauma history, and their physical health.
Their age.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we cannot treat all these children the same. We have to find this child or this family is like this, so we have to adjust the treatment to the individual adolescent and their families.
Yeah.
So risk, how high the probability is for becoming an adult criminal, the need, what do we have to direct the treatment towards, and the responsivity. How do we adjust the treatment so that we can make the treatment more effective for this individual?
How do we make them respond?
So, on the basis of this R&R principle, there is an instrument called the Youth Level of Service Case Management Inventory. I know some of you probably know this, but this is an inventory that are used in many countries, but it is from Canada, and it is based on the R&R principle. It is systematically assessment tool to figure out who are these adolescents that we have to help in institutions. How high are the risk? Because we don't know if this adolescent we have in front of us have high risk or low risk. We have to do an assessment of it.
Yeah.
And this inventory helps us do that. It is categorized in 8 subscales, and it's 42 risk factors. And these 42 risk factors are proven by research that these are the risk factors in the adolescent or surrounding the adolescent that is making the risk higher. So if you have many of these risk factors in your life or around you, then the higher the risk is that you are having problems further down your life.
One of the examples is supervision by your parents.
So these 8 subscales is, like you see in here, is prior and current offenses, the disposition of doing criminal behavior. What are your history with the police and doing crime? It's an important risk factor. It says a lot. Have you done crime? It's more likely that you can do this later in life. The other risk factor are family circumstances and parenting. If you do have parents who don't know where you are at all time, who your friends are, what you do, you have a bad relationship, you don't talk much, the child doesn't care about what the parents think, then it's many risk factors in this area.
Yeah.
It's important. The third area is education and employment. If you have, if you are adolescent who don't attend school, and when you are at school, you are breaking the rules. You have a bad relationship with the teachers or the other co-peers at school. These are examples of risk factors in the school area. And then you have substance abuse. Do you use alcohol or other substances regularly or sometimes? And are they connected to you doing crime, or are they connecting to that you cannot go to school or have activities or have positive friends? These are risk factors.
Daily life functioning. Yeah.
And then you have peer relations. The risk factors there are if you have many friends who do drugs and do criminal activities, and if you do not have more of these positive friends not doing these things that have other interests, then there are high risk for you. Because when you are in the teens, you do what your friends are doing. So if you have friends just doing the negative things like drugs or criminal activities and not attending school and stay home, stay out late and not do what your parents says, then you do the same.
Yeah.
And we have the leisure and recreation. Children or adolescents who don't have any organized activities, they are at risk. Many adolescents don't have it, but these are one of many risk factors. And if you also are just not using your spare time to anything positive or like sustainable, then it's the risk factors. And personality and behavior, this is the one area that actually is about the adolescent himself or herself, because this targets the use of violence towards other people or the use of violence towards things, when you get rage and you smash things, or how you talk, if you verbally threatens anyone. And also the lack of or concentration, abilities to concentrate, and the lack of tolerating your emotions, the problems with regulating yourself. So these are the area that says something about how the children or how the child is thinking and feeling and reacting to their own feelings. The others says something about what's surrounding the child. Attitude and orientation is also this one. This is how you think about what you do. Do you feel bad when you have done something wrong? Do you say sorry? Do you think that the police are there just for a hassle and you don't have to bother what they say? Do you do what the adults are saying, or do you not care what police or teachers or parents are saying? Can you say that you need help if you need it, or do you just
push them away?
So these are the attitudes and orientations.
Actually, seeking help is a protective factor.
Yes.
That you take the help you get.
Yes, because that's a good point. We are here talking about risk factors. What kind of factors are in the children, or in the child and the surroundings? But most important of all is what kind of resources do they have? What strength do they have in their lives? Because many of these risk factors can also be protective factors if we just turn it. So that's the treatment. If you have parents who have no idea where their children are, then we have to train them how to get how to go out and find the children, how to be involved in their lives, how to take contact with the other parents, how to
be a parent and not a friend.
Yes. And if you have a child who is using a lot of anger and violence to regulate their anger, then they should learn how to do this in another way. They should learn how to use their words in a more socially acceptable way, so that they can get what they want without having to threaten and rage out.
This high-risk group, the ones that are in the highest of this youth level service inventory, they are breaking our system really now. We have a really big increase in referrals to the high-risk institutions. We have very few of them, and on the same time, we have a national strategy that private providers are no longer going to take care of these adolescents. So we have to take care of them ourselves in our own state government. But we don't have the places, and private providers are smart. They get out fast when they see that they are no longer needed, and take their services otherwise. They need to make their money as well. So we were empty out of places. So we are using acute institutions, care institutions that you talked about, placing this high-risk group in there, breaking the buildings. We had 64 fires last year. And all this reduced capacity is really breaking us down. So we did a national project. 8 weeks ago we started it, to investigate the challenges in this area and increase the capacity in short term and long term. We need around 57 places in total. And when I heard you talking about how many you have yesterday, I was like, okay, you do have some more problems. So who are these adolescents? In the high-risk group, we have been looking at national data from 736 youths. Around a third of them is high-risk group. Most of them are boys, 83% are boys, and a mean age on 15.8. 54% has an acute placement before, so they come from one institution, acute institution. 9.6 consent to placement. You know what Elisabeth showed you in the beginning. So 90% do not consent to treatment, so they are actively against it. And 55% has a diagnosis from the psychiatric services, mainly ADHD, 32%. This means we need services to entail this. 25% has more than one diagnosis, so we have a lot of comorbidity. And they can have even more than one psychiatric diagnosis. 18% report cognitive impairments. 53% report mental problems, but it's not diagnosed. And 57% are Norwegian ethnicity. The rest comes from other parts of the world, and we have big challenges helping non-Western cultures because it's different family orientations, there are different ideas about our health system, their own health system.
And the language, of course.
And the language, and that we are females, a lot of females working in this institutions. And I guess looking just at this room, you have the same problem as us. Yeah. And we need to consider all this when we are taking services into account. I think you will find a better seat on this side. That's a nice thing about being a presenter, we have better view. Remember when Elisabeth told you the 8 areas? We see in this group that they have truly high scores on all of them. 91% has low achievement in school. They have barely been in school, barely gotten an experience, and the experience they have might be very negative. 76 has problems with other students, and 88% have severe dropout numbers. So, and we see that. And school is not just to learn maths and Norwegian and everything else, it's also a good place to learn how to be an adolescent in a normalized way. Yeah.
Learn social skills.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And 84% of them have shown repeated violent behavior. And what we see is that the violent behavior is getting more severe and more consequences because there are more weapons used. Knives, for example. 40% has severe or persistent use of substances. But we also find a lot of dealers. 91% have criminal friends. 40% had 3 or more convictions prior to treatment. And these are really unsecure numbers because some municipalities convict faster, some convict less. It depends on the relationship with the police, the yeah, it's what do you call
the
it?
culture as
Culture,
well.
yeah.
Culture as well. What do you think
Yeah.
these children need
Yeah.
or not?
Yeah. And 70% are reported having callous and emotional traits. So, society versus adolescents' needs. Because the society wants closed institutions. They want to put them into jail, preferably. They see the danger that these adolescents show us.
It's much more easy to think that can you just not lock them up
Yeah.
and fix them
Yeah, fix
so
them.
they can come out and behave like normal people. This is what the newspapers and the other are
Yeah.
saying, and we understand it. But we have worked with these children for so long time, and we know that this is not possible. A long time ago, we had these institutions far up in the woods or
Yeah.
a long way from everybody, and it was okay during the time they were inside the institution. But when they are supposed to move back, they haven't learned anything.
No, and then it all starts all over
Yes.
again. Yeah.
So the same friends are waiting them, the same parents are waiting them. So
We
How
haven't
can they
changed
change?
anything. We have just taken them out. Maybe the parents got to rest a bit. Maybe not. Maybe they used the time to behave badly themselves. So yeah.
And in Norway, we have 8 places in prison for youth.
Yeah.
So it's not much. And it's for those who do the really serious crimes
Yeah.
or the multiple crimes.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they are getting placed in institutions, either for high risk, as Marianne has told you about now, or the other institutions that are for more lower risk or substance abuse.
Yeah. What actually surprised us when we looked at all the data from the 2018 to 2020 was that we were expecting a group with low risk, but this group was really few. It was like 7 people out of those 736, but there was a huge group. 76% of them were in the moderate group. So we don't even have a low risk group.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah.
We should not have low risk in
No,
institutions.
no.
They should be at home with their
So we
parents.
have the moderate group and the high risk group.
Yes. And when we talk about moderate and high risk, we are talking about how many risk factors from the 42 they are having
Yeah.
in their lives surrounding them.
Yeah.
The more risk factors, the higher the risk. And it says it all. If you have 30, 40 risk factors, you have a lot to work with.
Yeah.
We have many things we have to
And a lot
attend
of
to.
things we need to work on simultaneously. Yeah.
Yes.
And that is complex, and complex behavior problems also needs complex services. The family and adolescents see enclosement as punishment, not a treatment opportunity. Have you seen that, Elizabeth, when you meet families and youths that come to your place?
That
That they are like, feel like this is punishment, that this is not treatment.
Of course, they do not get placed on institution because of their actual criminal behavior. It's not a criminal court who says that you have to go to an institution. It's a civil court. But it is because of what you have done and because of that you need help to make changes. But these are difficult for families and some children to understand that we are there for their help, not to protect society from them. Of course not. We are there to give them help, and so that they can live their life like everybody else, not being controlled by the child welfare system. That's their main goal in life, is to get rid of the child welfare system. So that's a goal
Forever.
we like.
Yeah. And so this is the balance we need to do. We need to balance the society needs with the youths and family needs for protection and help. So we also need to be out there and debate in the public so that they see what we do. I think we have 4 debates now where we have publicly been out to try to talk about this group, talk about who they are, that they do not need prisons. So we are trying to also,
Educate.
we're trying as a team to educate also the society. Yeah,
Because there's a lot of stigma, for
Lot
these
of stigma.
children, and they need They need somebody to speak on their behalf and
Yeah.
to educate the society.
Yeah. And we do know as a team that punishment do not improve behavior, but we also do not reinforcement
Does.
really. So how to enable institutions to set the necessary boundaries for optimal treatment. This is always difficult when you're so many different personnel working with the children. Just think about how to get them up in the morning, how different people can be in executing that job. I find it difficult myself to wake them up. I find it really intimate to enter the room and also, you know, the danger with doing it. But it's necessary, and it's necessary to teach personnel how do we do it, how do we make it safe for everybody, how to do this correctly, how do we talk about the youth, how would you like to be woken up in the morning? Make a plan, make it more secure.
But we have to enable the institutions to know what they can do, how can they set the boundaries, and what are they allowed to legally.
Yeah.
Can you hold a child who is acting out? Can you put them onto the floor? In what situations can you do this? Can you go through their stuff in search for drugs?
Yeah.
Can you go through their clothes in search of? So all of these, we have system in Norway. Of course, we have the possibility to do this, especially in the high risk institutions.
Yeah.
But knowing what kind of situation, what kind of is this enough? Are we allowed to do this now, or do we have to wait until it escalates anymore? So it's really difficult.
It's a constant battle with balance.
Yes.
Yeah. To make this work, and that's why we need supervision. That's why we need this time to discuss personnel together. That's why we need to document to see what works, what doesn't work. Yeah.
And we have those who work in institution are just regular people. They don't have any uniform. They don't have any shots to settle down an adolescent.
Imagine that. Yeah.
They don't have any cuffs or anything
No.
because they have the ability to talk. They have the ability to communicate, and they have to communicate to motivate the youth, and the ability to they have to communicate to calm them down. They have to communicate to set boundaries. So this is the main tool. It's the communication.
Yeah.
And we have children who comes in with a lot of crime, a lot of violence, and this
even-
is all we have.
Yeah.
And we have it in institution who look like a home,
Yeah.
and in a normal neighborhood, nearby a train station, a bus station, an airport, so they can just go out and they can do whatever they have done before, and we have to communicate to help them and try them to stop them.
Yeah.
And sometimes we also have to handle them physically, of course. But these are the tricky areas in having an institution looking like a home in a regular society.
And even some of them can come delivered to the institution by the police with spit masks and cuffs and everything, and everything is taken off, and then they enter the institution
And the
But-
police go.
with their gear and everything. Yeah. So it's really strange how, but it's also an important part of it. Legal rights for treatment facilities in terms of care responsibilities. We have a lot of legal rights, which we just talked about. But how known is these legal rights? Because legal rights is difficult. So how do we operate this? How do we make those legal rights known for the personnel and know how to use them in practice? Which kind of situations can I use this? Yeah.
And we have to educate.
Yeah.
The police are often helping us when the children are runaways. They have left the institution without permission. The police are out there getting them back into the institution, and 1 hour later, perhaps it's gone again.
Yeah.
And the police say, why? Why do you do this? Why can't you just hold them? No, because we haven't the possibility to lock the windows. We cannot lock the door, or we can lock the door, but they can also open the window, and we haven't personnel to stand outside all the windows. So if a
Because
child
then
wants
we
to
would
go,
need 20
he can
people.
go, even if we have the possibility
Yeah.
to be a strict institution. with the way we have built our institution.
Yeah.
So if we now build them a bit different, trying to be cozy and a home-like,
Yeah.
but also the possibility to just restrict them more.
And do more treatment also.
yes.
Build, make the buildings more nicer to actually have supervision. We have a lot of supervision with the institutions, and they have horrible facilities, horrible facilities to be educated in. They also need nice facilities to be educated in, nice facilities to work, do their admin thing. Yeah. So it's not just about the security, but it's going to be a good work environment. And we keep forgetting that it's always the focus on the youths, but if we want the people to stay, we also need to focus on the employees.
And we have to have the possibility to do both. We have to
Yeah.
set the boundaries, have high grade of control, and we also have the possibility that the children should be deciding for themselves what they want to do. We cannot have not just one or the other. So always going from the continuum from control to autonomy, where you can decide for yourself if you are able to do that, if you have matured enough and have gotten the treatment so that you have come away from most of your criminal behavior.
Yeah.
So that's why we cannot have prisons and we cannot have a normal home.
No.
We have to have
Something
something
in
in between.
Yeah. And we do need to set those limitations in order to protect them and reduce future risk. So now we have told you about more the national, we are a national team. Multifunc is one of our treatment models. We have 5 different. We have for substance abuse and for low-risk adolescents and
Yes, we have these 3 target groups we mentioned. We have the high-risk group with most risk factors, and we have the low-risk group, who is not low risk, it's moderate risk,
yeah, definitely.
with some less risk factors. And we have the substance abuse category, which is addiction,
Yeah.
because we have substance abuse in every institution, of course. These adolescents have
Youths use.
history with using drugs.
Yeah.
So when we talk about substance abuse, it's addiction. So their own own units
Yeah.
for youth who have addiction problems.
Yeah, and then they have specialized.
Yes, they have
personnel.
specialized personnel, and they what we see with that group is that the addiction problem is the main orsak, main reason that they are in this trouble.
Yeah.
Because it's not that they are violent or criminal or have lack of empathy. It's because they have an addiction problem that they do all these things they do.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference between the high risk
And
or the lower risk and the substance abuse group.
We also saw differences with this instrument. We saw clear differences between the moderate group, the high-risk group, and the substance abuse group. One of them, a substance abuse group, more of them consent to treatment. And of course, that does something with how you can get them on board the treatment.
And they are also older.
They are also
16.7 years
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
15.8.
Yeah, yeah. And they have less crime and less attitudes towards
attitude problems. Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to say that the pictures that we have are actually from one of the high-risk institutions.
Oh, this is a lower risk. Multifunc is like it said, multifunctional treatment in residential care and outside, back into a normal society. Multifunc. I've been working in a Multifunc institution since 2008. I've seen a lot of adolescents and their families through this kind of treatment. We started out with 5 different institutions. Now we have 2 big units with 2 big institutions with several units underneath. So the Multifunc institution are built for high-risk group, but we are now trying also this model on the low-risk group. So the picture you're seeing here is one of my institutions. It's Buvika in Trondheim in Norway. It's a lovely building.
Yeah.
It's it was a family home.
A rich family home, let's just say that.
And a lot of glass to break, and they have been broken. Trust me. So yes, but it's this is how one institution is looking. So it's residential care treatment model for adolescents with serious behavior problems, the multifunc method. It was developed by a psychologist called Tora Andresen. He's now retiring this month, actually. So he's leaving the ship, but we are all ready to take it further for him. And we have institutions in Norway, in Sweden, and in Denmark. But we have had a lot of international interest. So I know some of you went to Stjørdal, to another institution some years ago.
Sorry to say
that institution was burnt down into 2021. So we had to find a new institution, a new building. So we found this, which is an institution originally built for those adults leaving prison with substance abuse problems.
Like
again,
a transition hall.
A lot of glass, easy to break out. The doors, you can just walk out, and outside here is Trondheim.
Yeah, it's
a city.
It's very straight to where I live.
Yes. So locking the doors, preventing them to get drugs, impossible in this building. So we have to do other things. We have to find other methods to stop this adolescents going out. And also there are a lot of trees on the other side. We have the bedrooms on the upper floor. And we have a lot of trees just outside, so they can just open the windows, get into the trees, and go down and take the bus.
Yeah.
So
easy route.
can we take down the trees? No, they are old trees.
Yeah, we are
cannot
not allowed
cut
to
them
take
down,
them.
so we're not allowed. But we have small units. The multifunc institution started out, when I started, it was 8 youth in one place. Now we have found that this is not possible to go on with 8. With the group, with how the group is today, we cannot have 8 children under the same roof.
They have more problems or more areas now, so it's
Yes. So now we have 3 or 4 adolescents under one roof at a time. And it says +4 because we also treat them after they have moved out. We are doing the follow-up afterwards. We have a gender mix in every institution in Norway. We don't have separate institutions for girls and boys. So this is for gender mix. But 80% of them are boys.
But in the substance use groups, there are 50-50. It's more,
And when you get a girl inside this institution, you know, because they have another way of acting out. Not so much verbally, but they are doing something with the staff that are quite tricky sometimes. The age is 13 to 18. And they can be placed with consent or without consent. Mostly without. So they go through civil court, and they are getting a verdict that you have to stay in this institution for up to 12 months. But our treatment is 6 to 9 months inside the institution, and we do follow-up for 4 months afterward. The target group are serious behavioral problems and the high risk of continued serious behavior problem into adulthood. So the high risk does not say anything about the high risk for violence. It says something about the high risk or the probability of you becoming an adult criminal or adult drug addiction.
You also had some misconceptions about that in Norway. They think it's about the high expression of behavior. The higher they threaten, the greater the behavior. But it's nothing to do about that.
It's
the low risk can also have that.
Yes, it's about the spread over several areas over a long time. So that's the high risk. They are often early starters. You know, the children you see in kindergarten, you see them, this is probably going the wrong way. You can point them out quite early. And they have collected these risk factors throughout life. And remember, behavior problem does not involve inside the child alone. It has to involve with the surroundings, the
Yeah.
family, the school, the kindergarten, the friends, the community.
Yeah. Everybody contribute to what we see today. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the main important things about Multifunk is that we have to have available caregivers, because we are doing the treatment towards the caregivers as well. It's not just the children who moves into institution, the caregivers are getting treatment throughout the whole period and also afterwards. So there has to be some kind of caregivers available for this treatment. It can be the biological parents, it can be an uncle or an aunt, it can be foster care, foster parents, it can be that they have to move on their own in a little apartment with somebody to follow them up in this apartment. So
Yeah.
we have to work with these who are supposed to follow them up afterwards.
Because then municipalities have their own home-based services that they provide. Yeah. And it's also cheaper for them than having the state providing it. Yeah.
And the multifunc institution, the high-risk institution, is supposed to be the last thing you do. The last thing you do is to place an adolescent on a multifunc institution. You should have tried everything else first, because living in an institution isn't the thing we want for these children,
No.
but somebody has to, because of their behavior. So you should have considered or tried home-based treatment before you place them in a multifunc institution.
And it's good that they have this stop point to see, has it been tried before? What other measures have been tried before? So we are not too quick for this decision.
This is just the map of the organization, which is quite important because of these 4 teams that you see. Normally in an institution you have this milieu-therapy. I know you have this word, milieu-therapy.
We checked
in your language. So milieu-therapy, the milieu, this is the main team you always meet in the institution. It's the personnel who has the 24/7 care for the children. This is where the treatment happens, in this team. But you have the 3 other teams who are supposed to give them the multisystemic treatment. We have to ensure that the family gets a good treatment during the stay on the institution. So we have our own family advisors, family therapists, who can meet the parents at intake and have some goals for them to how they should behave otherwise on another way towards the children.
their own goals, not the children's
No,
goals.
their own goals. For example, regulating yourself when you talk to your child, be more positive in the communication, be more at home, be aware of where your child is. These are the typical goals for the families. So the family therapists are following the parents throughout an institution's stay. And they also do the follow-up afterwards. So when the children move home, the family therapists are right there with them to support the parents further.
So they take over for the milieu team.
And of course, school is important. We know that for children in child welfare system, the school statistics are very, very bad. They don't attend, they don't get education, they don't get employed. So we have to do something about this. So in this multifunc institution, you have kind of pedagogical staff who knows the school system, who knows the law and speaks the school language. So you have to work with the norm, because these kids in our institutions go to the normal school. We don't have any institution school.
No.
So they are in regular schools, and then you have to talk to the teachers, the principals, on how to take care of these kids who can probably be a bit of a struggle sometimes. And of course the behavior. The school is an excellent area to rehearse your new social skills, how to talk to others, how to follow rules, how to be around people. So the regular school is an excellent training area for our
Peers
children.
are excellent moderators. So
Maybe they can get to know somebody in the class who can take them to a soccer match or a cinema or whatever, just so you can.
Yeah, and we see that. We see examples of that, and it's just building to other areas, and it strengthens them.
And of course, the most important thing of all, family. Because the children, adolescents, adults, our family are important to us. And either we are under the age of 18 or over the age of 18. So no matter how bad the parents are, no matter how bad the relationship are, the children need somebody in their family, in their private network. We cannot be just this network of social workers.
No.
We have to have some families around these children. So no matter how bad these relationships or these parents are, unless it is something bad going on that are dangerous to the children, of course.
Yeah.
But we have to do something about this parental relationship towards the children and how they are functioning, enhancing their skills, and just into set boundaries to talk to the children without yelling or threatening or violence or whatever.
Yeah.
We have to do something about this relationship inside the family. So that when the child are moving out from the institution after 1 year, has the same family to come home to, but they do meet them in another way, more positive way.
Yeah.
So the principle of Multifunk is the R&R principle I talked about earlier, the risk, need, responsivity. It's the high-risk group. We are directing the treatment towards the needs that you saw in this figure. And we are considering the children's mental health, physical health, intellectual capabilities, and everything else. So we have to know about these things about every individual child so that we can adjust the treatment to fit to this exact child and its family. We are openness, involvement, and inclusion are very important in Multifunk. We don't do treatment behind the adolescent's back.
No.
They know what their goals are. They have been into assessment with the psychologist, so they know what we think you have to do differently.
Yeah.
And the children are involved in setting their own goals in what they want to do.
And involvement is also mandatory in Norway for when children move into institutions.
So we have the treatment plans that they are involved in making, if they want. It's not always they want, but we try hard to get them involved.
Yeah.
And also the parents. And the children know what the parents have to work with. The parents know what the children has to work with. So everything is open and everybody is involved in the treatment. And the control versus autonomy, like I talked about, we start off quite controlled with the children in phase 1 when they move in. We are more restricted in this phase than when they are about to move out, because we have to involve the treatment and involve the treatment after where the children are in their way of getting better. So in the beginning, we have more strict rules about going out. Then you have to have staff with you because they do drugs and everything. So we have to follow them closely. But as the time goes by and the children are reaching more of their goals, they can go out more on their own and rehearse, because that's what they are supposed to do, out in the regular, normal society and rehearse their new skills.
Always future orientation.
So the treatment is inside the institution, yes, but it's mostly important outside of the institution. So always balancing the way of control and autonomy, letting the children decide for themselves only when they can. They cannot decide everything. We have to set some boundaries, we have to have some rules, and we have to balance them according to what the exact adolescent is capable of. The treatments are focusing on enhancing the strength and resources and diminishing the risk factors.
Yeah.
Like we spoke about earlier, how to get a risk factor becoming a strength. That's an important part of this treatment. How the lack of positive peers, how can we build up so that the adolescent get positive peers to be with and is accepted into that kind of environment.
Yes.
So we are promoting responsible behavior for the children. We have a here and now focus, not so important whatever has happened before. We know about the things that have happened, but that's not the main focus. The focus is here and now and forward. What can we do differently to what we have done? So it's quite future-oriented. We are specific in the goals, and they are action-focused, so that the goals are specific enough so that everybody knows when you have reached a goal or not.
Yeah. Because the criteria for reaching the goals are also set.
Yes.
Yeah.
It cannot be a goal where nobody knows when it's reached or not.
No.
So drug-free, it's quite concrete goal to have. Speaking what you want without doing, without threatening, for instance, is another goal that they can have, which is quite concrete. So
Getting
that's
up in the morning.
Getting up. Yes, and it's always customized to the youth developmental level where the children are.
Yeah.
And we are daily working reaching these goals. The goals are open and then children are involved in it, and we are daily working on how to reach the goals, and weekly and monthly, and we are assessing it and then evaluating it all the time.
Yeah.
So-
Within the personnel group. Yeah.
Yes, so it's absolutely a treatment facility. They do not come to a multifunc institution just to live and have care. They have that also, but it is a treatment facilities. For 6 to 9 months, it's quite hard work for these
Yeah.
adolescents.
Yeah.
And most importantly, we are promoting generalization. The things you are learning inside the institution, you have to be able to use that in the regular society, in all these different situations that can occur. We don't know, we can't rehearse everything inside the institution, so they have to be able to generalize what they learn inside to use outside.
By practicing.
Yes.
Okay.
So summarize, catch them being good. Punishment do not work
No.
on this group. This group of adolescents have had punishment their whole life. Bad reviews or been talked to in badly manners. Nobody likes them, nobody wants to be around them, except the other who are just as bad as you.
Yeah.
You know, every school meeting, the parents have heard about all the trouble their kids have done. So it's all bad. So now we are focusing on what they are doing. If it's the small, small things that clearing out the table when you're done eating, if you say thank you, or if you help carrying in the bags when you've been shopping, just the small things, to the bigger things, that you ask permission to go out, that you went out and you got offered drugs and you said no. So it's the small things and the bigger things. Always catch them being good.
Yeah.
Give them praise and reinforce these good behavior so that we are building strength.
Yeah.
And whatever it takes. We are doing whatever it takes to help these children. Inside the law, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And we have some methods. Some you probably heard of some of these. Motivational interviewing, which is a technique or how to speak to people who wants to do things in another way,
Yeah.
mostly developed for drug using.
And ambivalence.
Yeah. So how to speak to a child, not with the pointy finger, you have to stop, but more, what can we do? What do you want? How can we turn this ambivalence over to, I want to stop, I want to do something else, I want to do other things in my life.
The pointed finger is triggering.
And we do the contingency management system, or token economy, which is kind of like, oh, you did a good thing, you get something, and you can exchange this into something you want, money or a new T-shirt or whatever, in the beginning, because we have to, they come in with lack of motivation to change.
Yeah.
90% of them don't want to be there. So we have to have a system of building this motivation, and then we use this token economy, or we reinforce their behavior from the outside. to getting them to feel the inside motivation after a
They
period of
need
time.
to get to see that it works. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's quite nice when I speak nicely to other because they speak nicely back to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I should continue
Do
do
that
that
often,
Yeah.
yeah.
Instead of just getting a coin or whatever, it feels good as well. So that's token economy is important in the first few phases of the treatment. We use the principle of MST and PMTO. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's multisystemic therapy in home-based. We use the same principle. And we use the parent management training Oregon, which is the program we use on the parents, so that they can learn how to speak in another way to their children, how to praise the children, how to regulate themselves when they are in an argument with their child. So it's the system that it's the program that helps the family advisors to treat the parents while the children are in the institution. We of course have safety and security program, how to handle this.
All of the
children.
institution actually in Norway has that, from acute care and treatment
Yes.
facilities.
Which is the most important part there is how to speak to an angry child so that they don't get up and rage or whatever, but also how to handle them physically if they are in doing things that can harm themselves or others.
In the most harmless way possible. So
Yes.
they train 4 hours each month to
Yes.
do this. Yeah.
And we do behavior analysis. What happened? What triggered it? What were you thinking? What were you feeling? What did you get out of it? So that we can see what kind of processes the children are going through when they do drugs or when they act out or when they destroy the TV in the living room or whatever. What happened, so that we can the children can get to know themselves, their manner of thinking and feeling, and that the staff can do things differently. Was it my tone of voice you reacted to? Then I speak another way the next time, so you don't get so mad. And we also do the ART, Adapted Aggressive Replacement Training, where we use a set program for the children to rehearse their social skills, to manage their anger in another way, and to moral reasoning, what's okay and not to do in the society. So it's a group program for the children to be in. Yes. We've talked about this, but education and work are important.
Yeah.
So what the children are learning inside the institution is one thing, but they have to be outside in the regular school to both enhance their academic performance and also learn the new social skills. So we have this pedagogical team who is both assessing every child that moves into the institution and follow them up during the school day. Not side by side, but in a way that they get report back from school on how the day did go, how the day went, so they can give them praise or reinforce the good behavior that they have shown at school. And the last part, all the things we learn at the school they are going to when they are in the institution has to follow the child when it moves back home and back to their school where they came from, because it's difficult for the school they came from to get them back. They are thinking they are getting back the same crazy child who ran around with knife and was destroying everything, and nobody could be around it. So we have to show them that the child has developed, and this is what's been working. You have to do it like this and not this. Then you can see the same.
And not only the
result.
school. This is also for the parents, the municipalities. We need to secure them on, yes, they have developed. Yeah.
And the family treatment, as we also have been speaking a lot about, it's important that the parents are learning doing things in another way, so they are not triggering or not doing the same old things they have always done, to better the relationship in the family. And of course, ensuring that these kind of new behavior for the parents also continues after the the child has moved out. So we are doing the follow-up, which is the next slide. We are 4 months when the child is or the adolescent are moving out from the institution, it's moving back home or to the available caregiver, and the family team or the family advisors are being with them for 4 months. They can call, they can go to home visits, we can evaluate the goals, we can do the same thing we did in the institution, but now at home.
Yeah.
To decrease the amount of time you're in the institution and to increase the family network.
And also the practice with the security of the institution staff. Yeah.
So the most important thing is when you are taking the step of moving home is that we have build up and strengthening the system surrounding the adolescents and their families, because that's where they belong.
Yeah.
It cannot be just social workers around them. They have to have their own base, so they can return to.
Yeah. And we see that when they leave the institutions, they still have high risk when they leave. It's maybe gone down to moderate. So there's still things to work with.
We have some references from the research that has been done to Multifunc. It's in Norwegian and in Swedish, so good luck to you there. I
but
know it's in English. We don't have it here, but we can send it to you.
Yeah.
It's in English from 2019, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have
So,
it. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Well, take-home message. It's a heterogeneous group with high risk and multiple needs on every level that we have looked at. So the intensity and quality is highly costly, but more costly to ignore in terms of future needs among this group. Prison is next. A life without participating in the society, a life where your own family has also had the consequences of what have happened. There are costs that are more than money costs. There are society costs, there are family costs, and there are individual costs. So we need to do something about this now, because there will be more costly in the future, and we need to take measures to make national professional standards to ensure that we have the quality and the service provision that this group needs.
Yes, I think that's it.